Kickin It fans, welcome to episode 32 of Kickin It with Breezy and Don C. Got my boy Danny Balsito at the beach. How are the waves? How is the sand, Danny? I'm sure you're enjoying it.
Man, the waves are warm. The sand is blistering hot, but it is very refreshing. I mean, me and you've been talking the whole time I've been here, just to be able to wake up and look out the window and see the waves crashing and see the sun rising. I mean, I feel spoiled, like I feel like I don't deserve to be here or something. It's the imposter syndrome is hitting, but it's been good the last 4 months. Obviously, we've been hunkered down and trying to protect ourselves and the people around us. So it's nice to have a week at a little private beach villa and socially distance, but get some tan. Not that I really need it, but it's nice to get it anyway.
I like it. I'm sure you're loving it.
Loving it.
Diving right in, just to get things going, kind of just an update episode for you all to let you know what's going on in the world of sports. And for once, I feel like not really overwhelmed, but we're getting a lot of sports info. And to me, it just feels amazing. It's validation for all this time that we've waited. And it's been 133 days since we've had an NBA game. That all changes today. I am psyched. Scrimmages start today, 8 days ahead of the restart for the NBA. Couple of games to look out for. They're all on League Pass in case you all want to check them out. Magic Clippers, Wizards Nuggets, Pelicans Nets, and then Kings versus Heat. Danny, how much are you going to be watching today, if at all, since their scrimmages?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited, like you said, the fact that basketball's back. And hey, I'm not hating on the TBT and the throwbacks that they've been putting on ESPN.
Real basketball's back.
Real basketball. I mean, live NBA games. It is going to be a little bit of a sneak peek, right, of what it's going to look like down there at the bubble. They released pictures yesterday. I saw NBA, the court that they're going to be playing on, the socially distant bench, which I thought was a good touch to, kind of reaffirm the people who might be a little bit nervous and anxious about NBA coming back. But I'm really excited to see the Heat today. That's the one game that I'm going to want to watch, because me and my dad were talking yesterday. And the Heat are that dark horse. And you've been telling me this for a long time, that, the Heat are going to cause problems. You think that, they're small, fast. I've been saying it too. So I'm interested to see how they look, because you got to remember, that's a young team. And I think one of the things that's going to come into account during these games is that experience and being a vet and being able to adapt with these types of things. And I think that's where, a team like LA, who's got a ton of experience, Clippers and Lakers, right? They got guys who have been in the league for a long time. And the Bucks, who just brought in, the Lopez's and guys who have had a little bit more experience than Giannis and Middleton in big moments. I think that's going to, play a big part. So I'm interested to see how the Heat look, because you got to think, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, that's a young team. So I'm interested to see. And we know Jimmy's been grinding. That was a pretty good story, him getting the noise complaints from dribbling all night. But what can you expect from Jimmy Buckets? But I'm excited for that. Obviously excited to see Zion. But he left the bubble, didn't he? Is he even going to be playing in this game?
He is not. He is one of three guys that have left. Zion, Montrezl Harrell, Pat Beverly, that I know of right now. And I know that we mentioned before we got on, Alex Caruso skipped his sister's wedding to stay and preserve the safety of it. How many more guys do you think are going to leave realistically? I mean, right now it's 3, haven't even had any scrimmages. I would say at least, 5, 6 more guys? Who knows? In the playoffs, it's going to be really interesting to see.
You'd have to think so, right? And that's the problem, is we have no way to predict it. And that's what, we had said on previous podcasts when I talked about the tennis coming back, right? You have a bubble of 100, 200 players. At any moment they could leave. And then what happens? Like the life goes on, games go on. They're not going to pause it for Patrick Beverly. I mean, nobody cares. Anyway, I won't get into Patrick Beverly too much. Love you, Pat. But life has to go on. So when guys have emergencies, people having kids, obviously Caruso doesn't think weddings are quite enough, but there are going to be things that make people leave, and that's going to be an interesting dynamic. And that's another reason why I think it's so unfair that people say the winner of this year has an asterisk next to it. You truly have no control over what goes on, and there's no way to prepare. So, I mean, that's just going to be something we deal with. But I think you're right. You got to think, once scrimmages start to happen, once maybe some niggles and injuries start to come in, dudes might just have an emergency leave because they're not playing well. Who knows? I mean, it seemed a little interesting to me, right, that Zion left for a family emergency that we didn't know. And then news comes out that he's cramping in practice and he doesn't seem like he's in shape. Like, man, these are things that like the news is going to be trying their best to, the media is going to be trying their best to create drama and stuff because there's not much going on. So I'm very interested to see, but I'm excited to see the teams come back. I'm excited to see the NBA come back. And we're nine days away from the restart. And, basketball is obviously the one we've been looking at, but there is another sport that's coming back, here this week. So, tell our listeners what we should be excited for this week in terms of outside sports than the NBA.
Before we get into that, I'm perfect segue, but I forgot to mention one thing that really we need to tip our caps. You've got your hat. I need to tip my unrealistic hat. But the NBA, 0% positive COVID cases. Wow, that was a tough one. Out of 343 tests. Oh my gosh.
It's amazing.
I mean, talk about just an affirmation of their work, and many players have been saluting them. And Steven Adams, I think, had the best quote of the week. He was saying, reminder, this isn't Syria. We're at a bloody resort. I mean, which is true. And, these guys have all the amenities in the world. And now we have physical evidence that this has worked. I get that there's a lot of money in play and these guys are professional athletes, but it's possible to be in a bubble. Another sport that you mentioned, of course, that's coming back tomorrow. Right now we're filming Wednesday morning. Tomorrow, Thursday, is MLB's opening day, which sounds insane considering all of the flack the MLB had, Rob Manfred coming on that SportsCenter special. And when Mike Greenberg asked him, are we going to have a season? And he looked and said, I don't know. And at that point, baseball fans were losing their minds. I follow a ton of baseball people on Twitter. And tomorrow it's going to be really cool because the Yankees, my team, play in Washington, D.C. against the Nationals at Nats Park. Dr. Fauci throwing out the first pitch. Never thought I would hear that ever in my life, but, times are kind of crazy. And then Giants-Dodgers following. I want to take you back, Danny, because I know we mentioned, or at least I mentioned, I was a big baseball guy, probably even bigger than basketball in middle school and, elementary school as well. I attended a Yankees-Nationals game in Nats Park in 2012. For those of you that are watching or listening that are baseball fans, Andy Pettitte was the Yankee starter that game. The game went 14 innings, so we had 5 innings of free baseball. Phenomenal. Mark Teixeira had the go-ahead RBI. I remember this like yesterday. And Bryce Harper, I remember, was 0 for 7, 5 strikeouts in that game. And now thinking about it, I never would have imagined 8 years later they would be opening day in July. How crazy is it that baseball is essentially back before basketball?
Not only is that crazy, right, that we saw that, but the fact that Bryce Harper, right, can go 0 for 7 with 5 Ks and have a gigantic contract just a couple of years later just shows why I choose to watch baseball when playoffs time comes around. Because how crazy is it that, in a sport where batting 300 is elite, at the top level, but it also does shine. I mean, I'm just, obviously, me, I always take digs at baseball, but I played for so long. I truly think hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do off a top level pitcher in sports. And people are like, well, you've never hurdled and you've never swam, whatever. I get it. But you haven't tried to hit a 94 mile an hour fastball and then the next pitch, a 76 mile an hour changeup and not fly out of your shoes. So you have no idea the difficulty, but I mean, it's crazy. And the fact that we were talking a couple of weeks ago that Manfred had no idea when the start was happening. He had zero positivity in his voice. He wasn't like these other commissioners that were super positive and we're figuring things out, whatever. He almost just seemed like he was a freeloader. He was just kind of relaxing and saying, I hope things happen. And this makes me think, truly, how is it that the NBA has been preparing for this for months? And the MLB had no real preparation. Then all of a sudden they decide they're coming back. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, it's opening day. It just makes me think that there was a lot more communication and conversation between the commissioners, between, the White House and the commissioners, between team owners and all these people saying, here's what we're going to have in place. NBA is going to be the front, kind of league to set these things. And then everybody's just going to follow suit. So this makes me think that Manfred and Silver may just be having this conversation. MLB is going to be running a similar scheme. And then, we'll see what happens with the MLB. But it's crazy to me that they can start this fast and say that they're doing it with the same preparation and safety measures as the NBA is doing, right? I mean, it just doesn't seem to make that much sense to me that they can come back that quickly. But I mean, obviously with the NBA, like you mentioned, having 0% cases in the bubble, clearly they're doing something right. Clearly the players are adhering. And there's something too, like you said, putting so much money. I mean, crazy amounts of food. They're building a barber shop, for God's sake. It's like they're doing everything it takes to keep these players happy, to keep them healthy. So we're hoping all the leagues follow suit because, sports coming back, we'll mention it later, but it is a big thing. And it is something that does affect how people deal with these types of things. I know it has for me. When the UFC came back, everybody that follows our show knows how excited I was. So to see baseball coming back, basketball coming back, it's just leading things. Obviously, there's been soccer that's been coming back for the last couple of months. Tennis is trying to get its way back. Golf has been happening. So we're slowly starting to see things go back to normality on the sports side, which is a beautiful thing to see.
I even saw, I'm not sure if it was an anonymous GM or a GM in the MLB, mentioned that there's a chance that they could have some part of their fans in MLB stadiums as the year goes on. So who knows, really? And again, it's just total guessing game. There's no right answers right now, but the NBA luckily has shown that it is possible. Makes you wonder that if the MLB continues to move forward and they don't have any, crazy spikes in testing, they might make a playoff bubble. I mean, who knows? You never really know. They could go back to that Arizona idea that we mentioned earlier in quarantine. I want to move forward. Go ahead.
I was going to say real fast before we move forward. And
Sure.
we, like you said, it's hard to prepare, but it's also hard to know because I'm not sure if you saw up in New Jersey, right? They just put in a new rule in place, no more than 500 people at any event in New Jersey. And that affects the Giants and Jets. So then they have to decide right then and there, no fans for the entire season, because we're talking players, coaches, staff, media. That's already a couple hundred people that are going to be in the stadium. Where are they going to pick their top 200 season ticket holders and let them in there? So that's a big effect too, right? Like that's gonna make a difference. So the Patriots, and I saw there was one other team that's gonna have 20%, but we have no idea. It's California starting to shut down. We've seen the numbers in Florida. We've seen the numbers in Texas. Like, are there going to be some teams that get to go to their home stadium? Are there going to be some teams that don't go at all? I don't know if you saw that. I'm sure you saw the Blue Jays can't play in Canada, and they're talking about playing in Charlotte potentially at the Knight Stadium. Like, there are a lot of things going right now that teams are just trying to find ways to play. And I'll tell you right now, if the Blue Jays become, the new home team for Charlotte, you're going to see me out in the outfield watching from the grass, because that'd be pretty darn cool. But, I mean, you just have no idea. It switches on the day. And if you're not doing a bubble, you're kind of relying on that. So, I mean, that's what the UFC's been doing. Their next UFC in August is on the ropes right now because Las Vegas is starting to shut down, and they might not be able to, put on the next event at the Apex. So they might be moving out to Abu Dhabi Fight Island as well. So you're really just waiting to see what happens. So you can really control all you can control.
I wanted to let you know, I hate to squash your hope for Charlotte having a baseball team.
Oh, no.
It was confirmed that the Blue Jays will now play their home games in Pittsburgh. So a little further north and not Charlotte, but
Come on.
at least they have a home. I saw a lot on Twitter saying the Buffalo Blue Jays, having them play in New York. I think that'd be pretty cool. And it would make sense. They're in the American League East. The Yankees, the Rays, the Orioles, and then the Blue Jays are right there in that region. I think
I was going to say there's a lot there, yeah.
Right, but Pittsburgh is fine. But take us through Fight Island, because that was exciting. Masvidal and Usman, that fight, I think, didn't really live up to the hype that Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson did. But I want to hear your thoughts on what you thought of that first fight in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, first of all, hearing you say Usman, Masvidal, Gaethje, Ferguson, I'm so
getting
happy.
better.
I'm so happy you're getting into the UFC. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, when they came back after the lockdown and everything, and they started hyping up that Gaethje Ferguson card, I mean, it was loaded. I mean, everybody that knows this podcast and listens heard my voice when I was talking about it. I mean, I was like a kid in a candy store. The card was stacked, and it absolutely lived up to it. That Gaethje Ferguson fight was unbelievable, nonstop action, nonstop pace, and Justin Gaethje really did shock the world and kind of ruin that potential Ferguson versus Khabib fight. But fast forward a couple months, they come back to Fight Island for the originally Usman Burns main event for July 11th. Burns goes out with COVID-19. Masvidal comes in to every MMA fan's, wildest hopes and dreams came true. We were waiting for that fight. We knew it was going to be hectic, but the problem was Masvidal came in on 7-8 days notice. And that is a big, big deal. And Usman as well. Usman was preparing for a fight, flew back home, had to get tested again in Vegas, flew back. They had to deal with crazy stuff. And as much as we wanted to see that fight as fans, I think it was a disservice that it was done on that quick of notice. And I really do think that played a giant part into not only Masvidal's lack of success, but Usman's style going into that fight. Because we saw Usman's last fight in December against Colby Covington. Those are two wrestlers, like big wrestling base. And they chose to stand up and trade the entire fight. They're like, no wrestling. Let's entertain the fans. And it was a stand-up war. Was it the most technical stand-up war? No, because that's not what they do. But in this fight, when you've got Jorge Masvidal, one of the most dangerous strikers in the MMA right now, and one of the biggest stars, Kamaru Usman's coach for this training camp is Trevor Whitman, who coaches Justin Gaethje. And what he always says is intelligence wins championships. And what he did in that fight was absolutely genius. The foot stomps, holding him up against the cage, wearing on him, because he knew Masvidal had not been training for a fight. He had not been in camp. He had been training, and it's completely different. So he took him in, he wore him down, and he absolutely dominated him for 5 rounds. And like you said, it was not the fight we were waiting for. It didn't live up to the expectation. But I had been saying that leading up to it. Everybody who was texting me, who should I put my money on? I told them, I say, hey, my heart is with Jorge. I want Masvidal to win this fight because I truly believed if he did, we'd see Masvidal versus Conor next. And I thought that would be an unbelievable fight because Masvidal wants the money. Conor wants that big fight. So that's what I wanted. But my head, the MMA fan in me and the budding MMA analyst, whether or not I know much about it, soon enough I'll be in the gym training.
Wouldn't be shocked.
We'll be there soon. But I knew that was going to happen. And you knew that was going to be his strategy. Why wouldn't it have been, right? If you're facing Derrick Henry and the Titans, you're not defending the pass first. You're defending the run first. And that's exactly what Usman did. He defended himself against the strikes, took him to the cage and wore him out. And it was a little bit of a boring fight, but Usman retained. Then in the middle of that week on the 15th, we had Calvin Kattar versus Dan Ige as the main event. There was a lot of undercard fights that really were entertaining in that fight. Calvin Kattar showed he is absolutely the number 1 or number 2 guy in the 145-pound division by defeating Dan Ige. On the 18th, this past weekend, we had the flyweight title fight, vacant fight between Joseph Benavidez and Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo is truly one of the most entertaining prospects. He's now the Brazilian flyweight world champion. For those who didn't watch, and Donnie, if you didn't watch, I'm telling you, go back and watch this fight again with Deiveson Figueiredo versus Joseph Benavidez. Figueiredo fights at 125 pounds, and he looks as big as us in that ring. I mean, his weight cut must be absolutely hellacious because he cuts from easily 150, 152 to 125 to make that limit. And he is a monster.
Allow me to interject real quick.
Please.
When you talk UFC, I'm listening, believe me, because I want to I want to absorb all this like a sponge. But you're talking and everything's just, right here. You said 125 and that went straight up. He's 125 pounds. You're kidding.
That dude weighs in at 125 pounds. And he goes in there and looks like he's as big as us. I mean, as big, as strong as us. He's a freak. Goes in there with the blonde hair, goes in with a velvet shirt on top of some tight. I mean, he looks like an absolute rock star. And how about this? He wins that fight in absolutely devastating fashion. I mean, just 3 knockdowns, rear naked choke, just grinds Benavidez out. Benavidez is a beloved UFC vet, but it's Figueiredo's time, right? Apparently, before he started training MMA, he was a sushi chef, and before that, he was a hairstylist. So we're talking about maybe the most interesting man in the UFC right now. I mean, and he's an absolute budding star, absolute athletic freak. He's so technical, and that's so big on the men's side of the UFC because Brazil, in the past few years, I mean, before my era of UFC, I joined. I'm a McGregor bandwagon fan. I can't even act like anything different. Only people I followed was John Jones and Chael Sonnen before that. But Brazil was dominating the UFC. They had like all the champions. So now bringing him in and him being a champion is massive for the UFC. It's massive for the Brazilian fight culture. And it's massive for the future of the fights that are going to happen because talk about an entertaining fighter. So Fight Island has absolutely lived up to the hype. Coming up this weekend, you have Darren Till, who is the social media MVP of MMA. Absolutely hilarious. One of my favorite fighters fighting on Saturday. That's going to be an amazing card as well. So tune in to Fight Island in Abu Dhabi.
Amazing analysis as always, Danny. I still can't get over that a guy is a champion and he's 125 pounds.
Crazy.
I probably weighed that much in like 5th grade. Moving on. Charlotte MLS, their name reveal is at 11 o'clock Eastern time, Wednesday the 22nd. It's currently 10:21, so we're not going to know until we hop off the podcast. What's your prediction?
Honestly, when they came through, I was leading the charge of the Queen City FC when they
You
were
were.
taking it to
I
Western.
think you
I was
may have
leading the
tweeted
charge.
that multiple times per day.
I did, and I got a lot of love on that. A lot of people saying, "Oh, this guy knows, this guy knows." I was getting, and then they unfortunately said that somebody has the copyright for that. I don't know if it's like the Knights organization or another soccer organization. Somebody had it, so they can't do Queen City FC. So when I saw the names that they released, I mean, there weren't that many that stuck out in a positive way, Donnie. Like I know you saw the names. I saw was it Gliders, Carolina
I'm gonna
Gliders?
pull it up right now just
Please
for.
pull it up. But
Oh my
while you're
gosh.
pulling it up, I mean, for me right now, the leading front runner has to just be Charlotte FC. I think when you're talking about a growing team, you do not want to take the risk of putting a team name on the jersey that people are just not going to follow. I think now's the time where if you're going to add it later on, I think add it later on. But right now, I think I'm leaning towards Charlotte FC. Keep it simple. My favorite team in the world right now is Chelsea. And all their thing says is CFC. That's all.
Yep.
That's all it needs to say.
Simple.
They grew the brand. The fan base is what it is, and the prestige of having a team in Charlotte. I mean, the excitement that this city's going to have, the amount that we're going to go to games, and think about it. It's right there in that hotbed of Charlotte. It's going to be a beautiful state. It's going to be played in Bank of America Stadium. Beautiful, right? So you're going to have fans from Charlotte, from where you're around, Lexington, Columbia coming through. I mean, everybody, Raleigh, the capital city, they're all going to come down to watch these games. I think the name can only ruin the ambiance of what's going to happen, right? So I think it's smart if they just go with Charlotte FC and don't make a silly decision like the Gliders or the Sliders or the Monarchs or whatever it is. But please tell our listeners what the options have been this past week. I know they've crossed a couple out, but tell our listeners what the options are.
I think our food enthusiasts love the name Sliders.
Sliders.
Thank you for that. Right now, so what they've done, I think like their theme has been their hints and crossing names off the list. So it started, I'm not even going to tell you what it started with. Let's just go ahead to the names that are left.
Okay.
Right now, we've got Carolina Gliders, not Sliders, sadly, because
honestly
at this point, it is still there. At this point, though, imagine this. A modern, like aesthetically pleasing Charlotte, like rooftop restaurant, and they sell sliders, and they've got the Charlotte Slider special for game days. Buy two, get one free sliders. Come on, that'd be a good marketing pitch. Am I wrong?
It would be. I mean, it sounds a little ridiculous, but I could absolutely see them doing that.
It does. All right, so Carolina Gliders. We might have to pitch in and put sliders right there underneath it. Charlotte Athletic FC.
That is, in my opinion, one of the worst for a soccer team. I think that would work more for like a baseball organization.
That wouldn't be as bad as Carolina Gliders.
I think they're both terrible, but I think Athletic,
that's fair.
for me, but Athletic, I have seen some, like in other leagues in other countries, that's something Athletic, and it sounds okay, but I don't know. Gliders is absolutely horrendous. So if that's what it is, like, man, they've lost some fans. I know that for sure.
So Charlotte Athletic, Charlotte Crown.
I don't hate it, but
I like Athletic more than Crown, if we're being honest.
I don't hate it. I saw their little hint when the Crown over the stadium, and that looked kind of cool. And I mean, you guys know I'm probably gonna get a Crown tattoo on me here in like the next couple of months. King vibes. But the Charlotte Crown would be kind of sick on a jersey. I mean, imagine if the jersey with just the crown in the middle. It wouldn't be bad. But the actual name, like I think you could do Charlotte Athletic with the crown anyway, because it's the Queen City. I think you could do the crown on any of them. But
yeah. I get what you mean. I can see it on either way. If you go normal or if you go Charlotte Crown. Exactly. Okay, so to recap: Carolina Gliders, Charlotte Athletic, Charlotte Crown, Charlotte FC, or Charlotte Town FC. Okay, at this point, you got to just go Charlotte FC. Am I wrong? I mean, come on, you can't miss with that one. That one's generic. It's better to be less than more in the case of naming a team, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think when you look at the MLS, right, like the names that you have are so iconic. Like the teams that have names, like the New York Red Bulls, LA Galaxy,
Seattle Sounders.
Like these are names that like it matches with the city. Like Charlotte Town, no. I don't know where they got Monarchs from. I don't know where they got Gliders from. I want to
know. I want to know the origin with Gliders. I feel like we're dumping on it without having the proper knowledge, but at the same time, even with the knowledge, it doesn't really roll off the tongue.
It doesn't. And I think what's fun about it, right, is the Galaxy. Like that's just like a far off name that just fit, right? Like, and you got the WNBA team, the Sparks. Like these are like, they jump off the page at you, like the Seattle Sounders, Rolls. New York Red Bulls is obviously a sponsor. So that,
right.
If we can get a fat sponsor for this Charlotte team, I mean, if we're going to be called like the Charlotte Cookouts or something, or, who knows? The Charlotte
I saw
Jordans.
someone say Charlotte Hornets FC and literally just make it purple and teal.
Obviously, we couldn't do that because the Hornets have the copyright. But this is what I'm saying. Like that sound.
Bring back the Bobcats.
Oh.
You actually like that idea. I was joking.
I didn't hate it. I had thought about that before. I wasn't a Bobcat hater, to be honest. When the Bobcats came to Charlotte, I wasn't a hater. I mean, granted, those orange jerseys were a little sick to the stomach, but like if you just call the Bobcats but leave them the colors that we've been doing, I don't hate it. But I'm with you, what you originally said. I think Charlotte FC, the prestige of having CFC on the jersey is just, I think it would be sick. I think you could have that blue and purple Charlotte, Buzz City colorway going on. You could have a crown on the jersey. I'm sure there's going to be some sick sponsors. And imagine the different colorways for the jersey: a black, a white, a gray, include the teal and the purple. I mean, the jersey ideas are just absolutely, there's so many options. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that's what's more important. I think coming up with a great jersey, great marketing scheme, and just having a good environment is what's going to grow the team. And then you can start to get creative with the names after that. But I think Charlotte FC right now, it stays with that ATL FC. We're going to be better than the Atlanta team, knock them out like, the Carolina teams always do. But no, I'm excited for the reveal. I know it's going to be very soon after this. So, probably when we post this on wherever, we can, talk about what the team name is officially. And unfortunately, I think I saw that the team is not going to start playing until 2022.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah.
So that's obviously unfortunate. But I mean, if they start selling merchandise for this team, I'll buy it a year in advance. You know me, Charlotte boy all the way. So whatever it is, I'm going to buy it. All the jokes aside, if we're the Carolina Gliders and Sliders and there's a hamburger on the front of the jersey, I'm still going to buy it. I hope not.
We need to mark that and keep it in the archives in case we ever want to have like a sponsored team. The Sliders.
Exactly. I love it.
Sliders are pretty cool.
That'd be great.
So to close off today, I want to just leave our listeners and viewers, our audience as a whole, with a thought. Last night, my family and I watched Patriots Day, talking about the tragedy that was in 2013 at the Boston Marathon, those bombings. As I say that name and as I mention that event in our nation's history, I get chills running up and down my spine. But after watching that, the entire time they show prior to the bombing, they showed the scene, they show it happening. They show, very graphic images. If blood and everything makes you queasy, do not, just turn your head around, because it was tough to see. But then after, couples recovering, kids getting to see their parents after being separated. I mean, it almost brings tears to my eyes, because it happened 7 years ago, and you tend not to even think about it as much unless you know someone that was closely related, kind of like with anything. But it's a moment that I think we should keep in the front of our minds. The reason being, at the end of the movie, I was hoping the entire time, like, please show Big Papi's speech at Fenway. Because I remember when the Red Sox changed their jerseys that game to Boston instead of Red Sox. And I mentioned earlier, I'm a huge Yankees fan, but as I get older, those rivalries, yeah, they're cool, but, come on. At the end of the day, I'm not gonna hate someone for being a Red Sox fan, or for, someone being a Georgia Tech fan as a Georgia fan, whatever. Put that aside. But when Big Papi made that speech, after he made his comments and his statements, you've just felt that roar of the crowd. And it was a time of tragedy where people relied and, lean on sports. Now at this time, it sadly hasn't been like that. We've had to rely on a lot of different things to get us through this time. But now, finally, you feel like sports are just slowly coming back together. And I don't know how I'm going to react when tomorrow night, opening day, when Fauci throws out the first pitch. I don't know how I'm going to react when basketball's back. God willing, we get football to some degree. But what I want to leave you all with, and Danny, I want to hear your thoughts on it as well, is think about how important sports are. I know that there are a lot more things in our lives that are more important at the end of the day. But when it comes to having a healthy distraction amidst all of this chaos, sports are the one thing that are going to be there. The excitement is there. and it's the opposite of the unknown. Right now we're experiencing the, worst part of the unknown in life, but sports brings the happy unknown. And seeing that last night and closing the movie with Big Papi's speech at Fenway, it brought tears to my eyes, just because I'm so happy that we're going to get to have sports back, and hopefully it can provide that distraction that I think so many people need right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. Obviously, it gave me chills as well thinking about that as a Red Sox fan growing up. My dad's from outside of Boston, so Big Papi was seen as that figure, right? He was that figure in the city, and a lot of people that they may have their conflicting feelings about bringing sports back, and I can understand that. I can understand the health side of it as well, and not showing that this is something that can just be kind of taken for granted, and we can put these athletes out there because they're not human and they're just there for our entertainment. No, it's nothing like that. And it makes me think back to after 9/11 happened, and George W. Bush threw out the pitch, and wearing that USA jacket, and I mean, it was that you might not be able to hear the roar of the fans like we did during Big Papi's speech or after the first pitch or after these things happen, but you're going to feel it. You're going to feel that we are bigger than this. We're stronger than this. We can come together. And it's going to be the same when the NBA comes back, in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement, things like that. You're going to feel that, just because sports is happening does not mean we're forgetting the struggles that people are going through. In fact, we're bringing more light to those things. We're bringing people together. We're going to be able to celebrate that. It's not going to stop guys like me and you from talking about the severity of the COVID-19 and people wearing masks and blah, 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 right? All these things that go on, and Black Lives Matter and internationals being, having equal rights, and the LGBT community. I mean, these are all struggles that we will bring to light, and the athletes will bring to light. And they're on a big stage. These things should be put on the biggest platform, and they should bring a little bit of happiness and a happy distraction to the people who've been missing sports the most, because some people may think it's not that serious, but I know millions of people have had their lives changed by sports. So having this back on will bring a little bit of normality, a little bit of happiness to some people. And I'm there with you, man. I'm so excited to seeing Fauci throw out that first pitch, and no, baseball is officially back. And on the 31st, basketball will be officially back. It's going to bring a lot of smiles to people and give something for people to watch and talk about outside of things that just make them upset and anxious. And I think that is something that's just as important as actually cheering for your team to win. I think that's, me and you can argue about LeBron versus Giannis and Bucks versus Lakers and Warriors and all these things, right? We can argue about these things, but we're doing it out of love for each other and the love of the sport. I mean, that's what it is. It's about giving us something to talk about and something to really just raise your spirits. And that's what we're going to see. So I'm really excited to see it coming back.
I know we're among many that are hungry for sports. And, as we've said this entire podcast, sports come back today, at least, for basketball, for the NBA. Scrimmaging starts back up in Orlando tomorrow, opening day. And then the floodgates are just going to seem to just, open right up. That's going to do it for episode 32 of Kickin' It with Breezy and Don C. Do not forget, we are now on Anchor, so you can support us financially if you'd like. We'd really appreciate that. And a new platform as well. A little bit more spicy looking than SoundCloud. Danny, what do you think?
I love it, man. And the fact that, how professional do we sound with that little advertisement at the beginning now?
Oh,
I mean,
my
the
gosh, you're right.
boys are moving up in the world here, guys. Keep supporting us, please. Like Donnie said, if you are willing and able to financially support us so we can grow this and be able to travel around more, meet better guests and have a better aesthetic and a background and better equipment to bring you the best quality content, that is what we want to do. So if you are willing and able, please, if not, just share our podcast, copy the link, share it on your story like so many people have been. I do want to say thank you to all of our friends, and I say fans with, my little quotations, but, everybody who supports us, it's unbelievable. I mean, every single time we release anything, we see people who respond and tell us that they like our work, people that share it for their friends and their followers to see. I mean, it means the world to us. It means as much or more than any financial contribution, but we would still appreciate those too. But yes, thank you to everybody. We're going to keep coming back, and hey, school, it's looking like we may be together to record some podcasts soon. So hopefully we will be able to get off this Zoom kick. I love Zoom and I love being able to do this, but I am hyped to finally be able to do this sitting next to you instead of across
6 feet apart,
the virtual
two
web.
mics.
I love it.
Oh, cannot wait. Couldn't have said it better myself, Danny. Again, that's a wrap. Don't forget to check us out on all podcast platforms everywhere. and now YouTube. Thanks again for kicking it with Breezy and Don C. Peace.